Welcome to your 311 online math class. We're going to start chapter 6 with a preview. Hopefully you took the class before this one and you will remember everything that we're going to go over. Otherwise, it may be a true review for you. So we're going to start with some terminology. Factors. Numbers or expressions that are multiplied. 2 times 3 equals 6. These are the factors. This is called the product. Most of the factors we're going to see are going to look more like this. X plus 1 times x minus 3. And these are both factors. Reciprocal. You may remember that this is a flipped fraction. What you want to remember is when you multiply a number and its reciprocal, it will equal 1. 2/3 times 3/2 equals 6/6, which equals 1. We have an expression or equation. They look a lot alike, but they're different. An expression could be x plus 2. An equation could start the same way, but it will always have an equal sign, and it will have another side to it, so that these two sides are equal to each other, creating our equation. With expressions, you can simplify. With equations, we can solve. When we look at either one of these, we may be combining like terms. Like terms have the same variable and exponent. Three x and 5x are like terms. 3x squared is not like these because of that exponent. That makes it different. We will be combining like terms. It helps me if I underline or highlight things that are alike. Keep in mind that the sign that is in front of the term goes with it. So I have 3x squared minus 5x squared, which is going to give me a negative 2x squared. And then a 2x minus an 8x will give me a negative 6x. And then I just go ahead and bring down my 5. I'm going to move through this preview fairly quickly. What is nice about my videos, you can pause me, or you can fast forward whatever you need. So you can repeat them if you need to, or move through them very quickly and get on to your homework. Inside of, let's write another equation and talk more about some more terminology. We've got a name for this number, a name for that, and a name for this. The x you probably recognize as the variable. This 2 is by itself. It's not connected to a variable. It's called the constant. It is the number alone. We have to distinguish between it and this 2 because this is the coefficient. And it's also a number, but it is the number that is connected to the variable or the letter. We also want to remember that the variable is just a letter that replaces what we don't know. It's really our unknown, and that's what we're looking for. We're trying to find out what is the number that goes in the place of this variable. We will have several properties that we will look at, 5 that we're going to focus on. The first one is the commutative property. We will use the properties in our work. Commutative property affects addition or multiplication, and it's about the order. If I have 2 plus 3, I know that 2 plus 3 equals 5. If I reverse the order and say 3 plus 2, those also equal 5. The commutative property says it doesn't matter what order we add or multiply, we're still going to come up with the same number. The second property we're going to look at is the associative property. And if you think about the word associative, associate is that root word. The associative property is also for addition or multiplication, and here it's all about the grouping. The numbers will be in the same order, 1 times 2 times 3, and we group the first 2 to make the multiplication easier. So 1 times 2 is 2 times 3, we would get 6. If we use the same numbers in the same order and we regroup a different way, 1 times 2 times 3 is 6, we still get the same answer. We're multiplying the same numbers. We're just grouping them in a different way. The third property that we are looking at and that we will use through this semester is the distributive property. And the distributive property involves multiplication. It starts out looking like this, and then we distribute. We are going to multiply the 3 times the x and the 3 times the negative 2. So this would be 3 times x minus 3 times 2. 3x minus 6. The fourth property is called the identity property. And for the identity property, the value stays the same. Think about your own identity. You are who you are. I'm Cindy. I can, here I am. Nice little drawing. I can curl my hair, or I could color my hair, and I'm still Cindy. So my identity stays the same no matter what I do to my body. And so with numbers, we're talking about the identity where the value stays the same. So if I have a 3, I need to know what is it that I can add to that 3 where it stays a 3. Or what is it that I can multiply times that number so that it stays a 3? Well, we know we could add 0 and that would still be 3. Or we could multiply times 1 and that would still be 3. So the identity property, if we're adding or subtracting 0, multiplying or dividing by 1, we'll still have the same number. The fifth property is the inverse. And inverse just means opposite. We've already talked about one opposite, the reciprocal. So let's use 3 again. What can I add to 3? What's the opposite of 3? And I'm going to end up with 0. So the opposite of 3 would be -3. And when we add opposites, we get 0. We've already seen that if we take, let's say, 4, and we multiply by its reciprocal, so we want to remember, if I have a 4, it's the same thing as 4 over 1, so the reciprocal would be 1 over 4, and when I multiply that, I get the 1. And so I've used the inverse property here. In our math class, we learned that all numbers are real. At the end of this semester, you'll find out that some numbers aren't real. They're imaginary. But for now, all numbers are real. We have our numbers. We have the whole numbers, and we have natural numbers, and integers, and we have fractions and decimals. Natural numbers, these are the counting, where you start with 1, 2, 3, and keep going. Whole numbers are the naturals plus the 0. And integers are the negative or positive whole numbers. So fractions aren't integers. We have fractions, but they're not integers. Integers are whole numbers. We want to look at our integers and remember some rules about integers, the negative and positive parts. If I multiply a negative times a positive, I will get a negative number. If I multiply negative times a negative, I will end up with a positive number. Same thing with division. If I divide a positive number by a negative number, I will get a negative. If I divide a negative by a negative, I will get a positive. We want to remember that division can be written several different ways. We can write it as a fraction. We can write it with the little division sign. And you first learned how to do division using the box, the division box. Multiplication, you can use the dot, or you can use parentheses. If we do have a variable, we just put the variable next to it, and that represents multiplication. Our expressions are called polynomials. We can have, the polynomials are like a last name. They refer to everything. And then we can have specific names. A monomial is just one term. So one term, and it could look like 3x. That's a monomial. 3x plus 2 would be a binomial. We're going to have two terms. X squared plus 3x plus 2 is a trinomial. Tri meaning three terms. Anything more than that is just a plain old polynomial. When we multiply a monomial by a binomial, we're going to distribute. 2x times x gives us 2x squared, and 2x times 3 is 6x. So a monomial times a binomial, we still end up with a binomial. If we have a trinomial, a binomial times a binomial will end up, we can end up with a trinomial, or we could end up with 4 terms, which would just be a polynomial. When we're multiplying here, several of you have probably learned the FOIL method. And so FOIL, F is the first. We're going to multiply the first terms here. X times x is x squared. Then the O is the outside terms here. So x times negative 2, negative 2x. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that. That won't be my first technological mistake. You can be sure. I, it's the inside here that we're multiplying. So the positive 5 times the x. And then the L stands for last, and those are the last terms that we're multiplying. Positive 5 times negative 2, negative 10. Then combine the like terms. To get our trinomial. So let's come back over here. This was first, outside, inside, and last. This is just one cute little way that people have learned to remember what to do, but essentially you're going to multiply this x times everything in the second binomial, this 5 times everything in the second binomial, and then combine your like terms. Let's go ahead and take just a minute to talk about combining itself. Whenever we have numbers that are the same, have the same signs. So we're focusing on signs. When the signs are the same, we are going to add and keep the sign. So if I had 5 plus 2, you've been doing this since first grade. Positive, positive, those are the same. We add and we keep the sign, so the 7 is positive. If I have negative 3 minus 4, well, that has a negative in front of it. That has a negative in front of it. Those are the same. We will add 3 and 4, 7, and we'll keep the sign, the negative. Many times you may see negative 3 plus negative 4. I like to take these two terms and turn them into one. A positive and a negative become a negative. So we have negative 3 minus 4. And so I'll just take you back. That's where we are here. That's how we came up with the answer. If our signs are different, so we're looking at the signs. If they are different, we will subtract. And we have to choose or take the LG, large, sign. So again, if you had 5 minus 2, been doing this since first grade, that's positive, this is negative. We do the subtraction. We look at the numbers without the signs. 5's positive, so my 3 remains positive. If I had negative 5 minus 2, well then those are the same. So I don't want to do that. Let's see, let's make this one positive. They're still different, but this time my 3 is going to be negative. It will be helpful if you'll learn the rules. You can look at a number line for the smaller ones like this, but learning the rules will help you move through the information faster. We're going to stop here. I'm not finished. So we're going to look at preview number 2 video to finish. I don't like for the videos to be too long, and they can get too long, especially there's a lot of information to cover here. What I want you to do is email me and tell me that you watched this video. That will be good for 5 bonus points on test 1. So be sure and do that. For each test, there will be one video in the group that will ask you to send me an email telling me that you had watched it. Sometimes it will be at the end. It may be in the middle. I just don't know until I get there. So this is the one for test 1. And then after we finish chapter 6, in chapter 7, 8, or 9 videos, then I will have another opportunity for you to find bonus points. Good luck. And remember, there is a second part to this video.